So in this video, we're going to look at what a market index is with two examples, the FTSE 100 and the Dow Jones. But before I begin to explain that, let's find out what the average person knows about the stock market and what an index is. But luckily, I found some typical Austrians to find out what they already know. Hello, typical Austrians. Can I ask you two questions, please? Number one, do you know what an index in a stock market is and what it's used for? Take that as a no.
Not really.
Second question, do you know what a stock market is and why we use it?
Betretenes Schweigen.
Then in that case, let's start by explaining what that is. So for a more detailed explanation of how the stock market works, please view Isabel's video. But here I'll give you a brief introduction, and I'll do it through explaining how one company may work. So Chris's Knödel company. This is a successful Knödel company here in Innsbruck, and it's selling excellent quality knödels, liked by everyone in the city. It's doing so well that Chris is thinking about investing or expanding his business. In order to do that, he thinks about going to the bank. However, the bank thinks it's a risky business and is unwilling to invest. He ponders and he thinks about selling his stocks on the stock market. That means people can invest in his business and can get a share of the business for themselves. Thank you very much. Very nice. Very nice. This allows Chris to get capital quickly, in which he can invest in new restaurants, new staff, upgrading what he's already got, or researching new ways of making the knödels he already has. By doing so, he can expand the economy, which makes having a look at the stock market incredibly important for governments, and the way they do this is through indices. So as we've seen with the Knödel company, the stock market is an important catalyst for economic growth, and therefore monitoring the stock market is an efficient way of determining how the economy is doing as a whole. And we do this through an index or indices. And all these are is a way of seeing how a group of companies do in a particular sector, or if you take companies representing the whole economic sector, the economy as a whole. Now, there's a couple of ways of calculating an index, and I'll talk you through the two of the most famous ones that are currently monitored in the world. The Dow Jones, which is an index used in America, and the FTSE 100, which is a UK indices. We're going to look or create an index for our Innsbruck area. And so we're going to decide first which companies we're going to take. We can add in our Knödel company and call it company A and two others. Naturally, for an effective index, we'll want to have as many companies as we want, which are representative, so are stable. If we're looking at the economy in a wider sense, we'd want different industries to be represented. For example, hospitality with our Knödel industry may be a transport, and there may be a quaternary sector. Then what we need to do is establish what the stock price of each company is. To keep it simple, we'll say that company A has a stock price of 1, B 2, and C 3. And the outstanding shares, that is how many shares there are of the company. And again, keeping it simple, we'll have 1,000, 500, and 200. Now the Dow Jones works on what's called a price-weighted index. So all the Dow Jones is concerned with is the stock price. And for this year, which we'll call year 1, the stock price sum is 6. But an index works over the years to monitor the growth or the decline of the sector. So we need a second year, year 2. Again, we'll keep the same companies, and we'll also keep the outstanding shares, which will become important later in the video. But year, Company A, the Canada company, had a successful year and now has a stock price of 5, so an increase of 4. Company B has a stock price of 4, an increase of 2, but unfortunately Company C has seen a decrease of 2 to give it a stock price of 1. However, the sum of the stock price is 10. And I'll put that in here to make it clear. The way an index is then calculated is we need an arbitrary number to times it against. And for this video, I'll take 1,000. For a price-weighted stock, we need the sum of the stock price of the previous year, which is 6. And I've mixed up the numbers there. And the stock price of the current year, which is 10. Which, for the Dow Jones, our Innsbruck-based economy would have grown slightly, giving us a new index number of 1,667. However, the Dow Jones is criticised because it's taken on stock price, which means smaller companies, for example Company C, which only has 200 outstanding shares or available shares, is much smaller than Company A with 1,000. But as you can see, the decline of it has a much greater effect. And you'll see this when we calculate the same companies, or we calculate an index with the same companies, but this time using the UK FTSE 100 method. This time it's called a market capitalisation weighted index. We have the same companies, A to C, the stock price has remained the same, and the outstanding shares between the 2 years. But instead of just factoring in the stock price, we're going to factor in the size of the companies. And we do that by simply timesing the stock price and the outstanding shares to create the market capitalisation value. And this will give us a value of 1,000, again 1,000, and 3 times 200 is 600, which gives us here a total of 2,600. We'll repeat the process for the second year, this time giving us 5,000, 2,000, and 200, which gives us for this year a market capitalisation of 7,200. Again, we can use the same equation. We use the same arbitrary number, and we again need to have the sum of the current year, 7,200 this time, and the sum of the previous year, 2,600, and this gives us an index of 2,777. So as you can see, if I can write the Dow Jones figure calculation here, we have a comparison index growth of almost tripled to a much more muted Dow Jones. So as you can see, with the Dow Jones just taken by stock price, an individual company, if the stock prices are high, but regardless of the size, has a much greater impact, while as with the FTSE 100 and the market capitalisation weighted index, we can see that its contribution here is muted and the larger companies express the larger growth in the economy. This is important because in 2019, Boeing 747, which is part of the Dow Jones, saw its share price fall after a crash in Ethiopia, which dragged the whole of the Dow Jones index down, while as the S&P 500, which is another American-based index, but based on market capitalisation, saw no decline because one company's contribution was muted. Just a little background information from the two. So we've said that the FTSE 100 is a UK-based index and is made up of 100 of the most, or the largest companies in the UK. There are some factors that the company needs to meet before being allowed onto the index. For example, they need to have a number of outstanding shares that are available for the public to buy, and they need to publish their plans and how they do their business transactions so that they are safe and investors can have a reasonable chance of investing in them. The FTSE 100 is reviewed every quarterly, and where companies can be removed and added to them. It's not always based of the top 100 companies, because this can create market instability, and instead you have to have a value of about 90 to be accepted into the FTSE 100 and a value of 110 to be relegated into then the next market index in the UK, which is the FTSE 250. The Dow Jones, however, is made up of 30 companies in the US representing 30 different economic sectors, and again is updated every now and again depending on how the individual companies fare. So I hope this video has given you a brief overview of how two of the major indexes work and a little bit of clarity on how they're calculated. Please look at our other videos for further information, and have a look at our document for a more in-depth overview of how these both work. Hello again. So, ladies, did that video help answer the questions I asked at the beginning?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. But for more information and a little more in-depth look at how the stock market works, please use the following links.